Hello, today you will hear a story with an interesting plot. After fighting over nothing, they hadn't seen each other in a month. She knew he would be back. It wasn't the first time. After the disagreement, their meetings were very stormy. They couldn't get enough of each other. There was so much love and tenderness. After a long separation, the lovers' feelings only intensified. The night was full of passion, new sensations, unforgettable emotions. It's a dream that lovers turned into reality. Every desire of hers, big or small, he tried to anticipate and fulfill. She loved it, and she tried to give him even more pleasure. She wanted him, wanted to do what he liked, wanted to be what he wanted. At Sapomet's spare, in that moment it seemed to her that she was made for giving herself to him and pleasing him. She tried to remember every minute of that night, every kiss, every touch of his hands and lips, to dissolve completely in his passion. But time passed, and he did not return. She learned from mutual acquaintances that he was getting married. The bride was smart, beautiful, and rich. It was difficult to imagine so many virtues in one woman. But there it was. Lisa decided to go to the wedding, to congratulate Gleb and to look him in the eye. Buying a huge bouquet of white roses, she went to the most chic restaurant. That's where the wedding was to be held. But the celebration was allowed by invitation cards, which Lisa did not have. The young couple would be arriving any minute, and she decided to wait for them at the entrance. Just as she sat down on a bench, she saw two cars pull up and a newlywed couple get out of one of them. She blocked their way, said the speech she carefully prepared, slapped a bouquet on the groom's face, and walked away under the indignant looks of those present. Karina immediately realized who the girl was, but did not ask unnecessary questions, and pulled Gleb into the restaurant. It seemed to Lisa that her life was over. I live without the person she loved. She was a sensible girl, and was well aware that thousands of women find themselves in such situations, but experience this betrayal in different ways. Some easily forget everything, others immediately begin to look for a new partner, and some try to commit suicide. Lisa included herself in the third. My mother always said that suffering cannot be kept inside for a long time. You have to throw these emotions outside, to cry, to scream. Let the boil burst quicker and not fester inside. She cried and drank and cried again. On the second day, she called her best friend and asked her to come over. Gorka rushed over at once. She did not recognize her friend. Puffy face, eyes like a raccoon, red and swollen. Looks like a vampire, red, tangled hair, and a huge nose. Oh my God, what a woman! Are you crazy? What are you doing to yourself? Come on, get dressed. Let's go get some air and talk. Lisa obediently got dressed, and they went out for a walk. She told her friend everything that had happened between her and Gleb. She really felt better. She had to learn to live without him, to get used to the idea that she begins another life. Gorka reassured her. Gleb felt bad too, especially after the scene outside the restaurant. His mood was spoiled, but he tried not to show it to those present, and especially to his wife. It was not her fault. Gleb married her on the fly. And since every woman knows with whom she has slept, Karina was sure it was Gleb. He just was not so categorical. They had only once. It went somehow sluggish. It seemed to him from such sex one does not get pregnant. But apparently, there was one wrong move, and now he's a husband. He decided for himself that he would take a DNA test to be sure that he was the father. Gleb felt that Karina loved him and really wanted to marry him. He was a good-looking man. Oh, with a good athletic figure. His wavy black hair was always neatly styled. And those dimples on his cheeks, they were what drove women crazy. Habitually, when he smiled his white-toothed smile, he just disarmed the already weak sex. He knew it and used it without hesitation. A few months after the wedding, Gleb worked. Karina was at home. She did not tolerate the pregnancy very well. Nothing helped her with severe toxicosis. Etyme appeared first on her feet, then on her hands. In the morning, her face got swollen. It was very hard for her. It was pathetic to look at her. But gradually everything normalized, and on time, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Beautiful, but most importantly, long-awaited. The whole family took her from the hospital, her husband, mother, father, and little brother. Lisa followed Gleb's life and knew very well that he had a son. She never forgot him for a minute, just as he never forgot her. They reached out to each other, but it was hard to reach. The obstacle was a powerful one: family. Lisa, as she was called at work, lived, slept, ate, and worked, but she did it all mechanically. She could not sleep until she remembered their nights in detail. His thinking about him all the time was affecting her too. Lying in bed with Karina, who waited for intimacy every night, he could not have sex with her until he remembered Lisa. Karina was not as temperamental and desirable as the one who had smacked him in the face with a bouquet. And well-deserved, don't act like a pig. Lee and Karina's family was quiet and decent, but no more than that. 6 months had passed since Demotchka's birth, and Gleb decided to take a DNA test after all. He took the baby's material and took everything to the clinic. Everything to the clinic, the result was negative. The baby was someone else's. He was shocked, even though he had anticipated the result. He began to feel unhappy about the family relationship, which had burned itself out before it had even begun. Lisa was going through a change in her personal life. At Gorka's birthday party, she met a young man. His name was George. They immediately took a liking to each other. After the evening, he went to see her off and immediately begged for a cup of tea. Lisa was not ready for such a rapid development of events, and she pulled George away from her, said good night, then very disappointed the young man, not used to being rejected. Constant thoughts of Lisa urged Gleb to talk to his wife. The only thing that stopped him was the fact that Karina was breastfeeding her baby, and his worries could cause her to lose milk. Gleb waited, gradually getting used to the baby, who each day was becoming interesting but completely unlike him. He was terribly annoyed when his wife's parents came and said that Demotchka is a copy of Gleb. everything was solved by itself, helped, as always, by His Majesty Chance. Karina's friends came to congratulate her on the birth of the baby. Before that, young mother did not allow anybody to come and look at the baby. They brought a lot of presents, a cake and sitting over a cup of tea. One of them, apparently wishing to do something nice for the young father, said, "You'll have a beautiful baby, just like you, Gleb. You are very similar to him." "Yes, we cannot be similar," he said angrily, "because I am not the father of the baby. It just came out because it had been on the tip of my tongue for a long time." The girls looked at each other. Karina felt hot and she asked the girls to leave. After they left, there was hysteria, calls to Dad and Mom. They're coming and figuring things out. Gleb knew that he shouldn't have taken it out of the closet, but it was an accident. "You did a mean thing," said Karina's father. "You should have told us first that you've blabbed to the world what you're not sure." "If I wasn't sure, I wouldn't have said anything," said Gleb and showed the DNA test. "And what?" my father asked. "Am I supposed to believe this piece of paper?" "It's not a piece of paper. It's a document confirming that I am not the father of the child, and only your daughter can name the real father." All eyes turned to Karina. She was sobbing profusely. It was scary to approach her with a question. She was left alone to recover a little. Time passed, and she called only her husband to her room. "Why did you do the test? Are you unhappy with me? Do you not like me as a woman?" "Look, I didn't do the test because I don't like you as a woman, but because I always doubted that you could get such a result from one intimacy. I saw that my son didn't look like me. And after revisiting my childhood photos, I was even more convinced of that. And at the end of the day, I have a right to know the truth. Do you even know who the father of the child is?"
"I do," the wife answered quietly. "But I never loved him. And I fell in love with you immediately. I can't guarantee that. Decide for yourself not to call on every occasion a mom and a dad. Do not bring up our daughter. She is a model mother and wife." But Gleb didn't let her finish, so bring her up, so that she was more discerning in their sexual relations and headed for the exit.
Gleb, stay. He heard his wife's voice, but he was already shaking from her voice and tears. To Lisa, she was like a ray of light after this realm of tears and reproaches. As he rode in the car, Karina called him endlessly. He didn't want to hear how much she loved him. He was in a hurry for his love and his new life.
Lisa waited for him all evening in vain, turned him down, citing a headache. "I've had enough of him," Lisa paced from corner to corner. "I'll throw him out tomorrow if he dares to show up."
But he didn't come, not tomorrow, not the day after. He didn't come at all. Well, to hell with you, thought Lisa, and went to meet Georgie. As a month passed, Gleb did not show up, and she had to keep the promise she had made to herself. So she invited Gregory over for a cup of coffee in the evening to have breakfast together in the morning. Speaking love to him, she said to herself, "This is a spite, Gleb. He is no worse than you, and you live and raise someone else's son." After saying all this, as if in her mind, she calmed down and fell asleep in the arms of her new lover. Karina didn't wait for him that night either. The next morning, she received a call from the hospital saying that Gleb Prokhorov had been in the hospital and had had an accident. Having given the child to her parents, she rushed to her husband to the hospital. His condition is grave. He is in a coma. Your consent to surgery is needed. He has a huge hematoma on his head. It must be removed. And the leg, which was pressed against the door, is especially worrisome. If the treatment doesn't help, we'll have to amputate it. But we understand the man is young, so we will try to save his leg. She gave her permission for the operation. She asked for a private room and stayed to take care of her husband. The operation was successful, but it took time for the crisis to pass. My husband's face was all broken. His nose was broken and his lower lip was split. The leg was saved by all available means, but the treatment was very bad. Blood vessels were severely constricted. His toes began to turn black. Gangrene began. A vascular check showed that the leg had to be removed as far as the knee. And from there, the vessels worked. Karina didn't know what to do. Do you want to save your husband or your leg? So I'm telling you, you can't save your leg anymore. Look, where the toes are black, that's already dead tissue. If we don't amputate, we could lose a man, the doctor said seriously. She signed the paperwork and he was taken away for surgery. They brought him back 3 hours later without his leg. She was hysterical. If you behave like this, I will remove you from the hospital and have a nurse with him. You have to support him when he wakes up. He came out of the coma after a month. When he found out he didn't have a leg, he started smashing everything around him that he could reach. The doctors came running in, sedated him, and he fell asleep. This went on several times until the doctor had a serious talk with him. Now they make such prosthetics that you can't tell a real leg from a real one, especially since you still have a knee joint. It's very important. Now everything depends on you. Don't give up. You are a man. Be an example for your son. After this conversation, Gleb did not eat or talk for 5 days. He just lay there with his eyes closed. The doctor came again. If you do not fight, you may die. When a person has no desire to live, all the strength is gone, the body stops working, resisting, and the person dies, although relatively healthy. And I don't want to live. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I don't want to sit on anyone's neck. Those are good wishes, said the doctor. You are good. You say everything right. And who prevents you from working, from providing for your family, from sitting on somebody's neck? You will not be a burden to anybody, and as soon as you will have a prosthesis, you will be a full-fledged human being. You will also be able to have a baby. The main thing is not to give up. Lisa learned about the tragedy with Gleb when she agreed to marry Georgie. He took her to Spain and there gave her a ring and proposed. And Lisa said yes. And when she arrived and went to work, that's when she found out from Gorka about Gleb. She was not allowed into the room. She broke through to the attending physician and asked to talk about the patient's health. She cried so much that the doctor relented. But when she found out that he now had no leg, she was in shock. What did you say? He doesn't have a leg. Is he an invalid now? She couldn't imagine Gleb the handsome one-legged man. God. How will he now live, work? She stopped crying, got up, said thank you, and left. It's a good thing I did not reject Georgie. Now I will have a healthy, rich husband, and Gleb can live with his Karina. And she began preparations for the wedding. The wedding was merry and rich. After the celebration, the young couple flew to Cyprus, where they spent their honeymoon. And, beautiful and happy, Lisa returned from her vacation and moved into Georgie's house. She started renting out her apartment, and as Georgie said, "This is for your pantyhose." Gleb was slowly coming to his senses. Kana's parents came, supported him, said they would help him with the prosthesis. They would order the best one so it would be comfortable. Gleb was in the hospital for 6 months and came home. The perpetrator of the accident was found. The investigation was underway, and Gleb testified. All this was supported by video camera evidence. The culprit was drunk, but rich. He promised to pay for all the medical expenses. Gleb said that the cost of treatment included the trip and accommodation in Germany, because that's where the prosthesis was ordered, the cost of the prosthesis itself and the moral damages. "No problem," said Jorik, "but don't file a police report." Rick paid everything, and although the amount of moral damage was not insignificant, he thought he got off easy. Gleb came back from Germany with the prosthesis. Indeed, it was comfortable, lightweight, and Gleb did not feel disabled. He was in a good mood, and after a week he went to work. He really wanted to call Lisa. It's a good thing she doesn't know anything, and she didn't see him in a terrible state in the hospital. He dialed her number. No one approached for a long time, but suddenly there was a click on the other end of the line, and a man's voice answered, "Hello." Gleb thought he had made a mistake and hung up. Dialed again, the same voice answered, "Hello." Gleb, undecided, said yes. The man said, "I'm Lisa's husband." "Lisa can't come to the phone right now. Call back later." Gleb hung up, upset. Lisa was married. He was upset. His work wasn't working anymore, so he asked to go home. He lay there all evening, smoking one cigarette after another. No, that old passion for Lisa was gone. He wondered how his life would have turned out if he had not had that accident on the road, when he was flying to his Lisa full of hope, the accident that, in his mind, had ruined his whole life. He did not love his wife. The child was a stranger. He had no paternal feelings for him. He had to leave. "I will live in my own apartment." It wasn't far from his work, because he didn't have a car anymore. And he didn't want to live like that anymore. Just in the morning, when he left for work, he told Karina that he wanted to live separately in his apartment so that she would not worry. "And then we will decide how to move on. Just remember that I love you very much."
Karina.
He was glad to be back in his own apartment. Everything here was familiar. The memories, the furnishings, and even in the corner, stripped by a cat, the wallpaper. He sighed, "I'm home." He opened the windows to air out the apartment, put the kettle on, made himself a delicious tea, sandwiches, and felt like a happy man. Then he sat down at the computer and found Lisa and her husband on social media. They were a beautiful couple. You could see that Lisa was happy next to this man, and he was happy that he could give a lot to Lisa, whom he truly loved. Gleb calmly watched everything, did not feel any jealousy or resentment. He understood that in his present situation, he could not give as much to Lisa as he could to George. This page must be closed and moved on with his life. Although it is hard to cross out of life such a piece of pleasant memories, he called Tatiana, the woman who used to come to clean the apartment, and invited her to come tomorrow when he arrived at the apartment after work. That's when he arrived at the apartment, he didn't recognize her. It was cozy, clean, and even smelled like pies. The clean curtains, blowing in the wind from the open balcony, and smelled so nice that Gleb remembered his mother, under whom the house was always in order. Tatiana was gone, but there was a note. All cleaned, cake baked, if you need me, call. Tanya. The pie came in handy. He didn't have to worry about dinner. A call interrupted him from his delicious meal. It was Karina calling. To be honest, he hadn't remembered or missed them once these days. So when he saw that his wife called, he did not immediately answer. Yes, hello, Karina. How are you? How is Damaka? We are fine. Even over the phone, you could catch the sad voice of Karina. Both were silent. There was nothing to talk about. After 20 seconds of silence, he promised to stop by one day and visit them. Putting down the phone, he exhaled heavily, as if he had put the last sack of flour over the side of the car. As time went by, Gleb was getting back to normal, working hard, helping Karina with the baby. He bought himself a car, so now he could go to the dacha, breathe the air, meet with friends, and enjoy kebabs. Several times, he picked up his wife and child and brought them to the dacha. The baby was already walking, babbling a lot, and he was interesting. But once he took him in his arms, Gleb felt the boy grow, he became heavy, and he laughed and called him Daddy. He was pleased to hear this, but at the same time, he was afraid that he could love someone else's child. It seemed wrong to him. The child should have a natural father. But his wife was happy. And near 2 favorite men, and she did not need anything else. Karina was often alone at home. Her parents were happy to take their grandson, and if it were not for Karina's requests to bring him home, they would leave him at home. In such moments, she had time to think about many things. She would look at herself in the mirror and find that she was an interesting woman. The turmoil with her husband kept her from sprawling out after childbirth. She was slender with a trim figure. Pretty brunette with green eyes attracted the attention of men she did not need. Lisa was enjoying life. She got a chance to not have to work all day. Virgie used to say, "Quit your job, my money is enough to live on." But she didn't want to quit her job at all. Communication was not her last priority. She didn't want children yet. She lived on everything ready-made, and the servant did everything at home, went shopping, cooked, cleaned, planted flowers, and watered. Her husband often sent his wife on vacations to warmer climes, as he could not devote enough attention to her. It took up all his time. Issa didn't mind. Her resort romances were enough for her for a long time. As soon as the memories began to fade from her mind, she packed her bags and left to rest. The next time she came on vacation, she met him. For by his appearance and arrogant demeanor, he was at least a Turkish sultan. He was good-looking, knew his price, looked down on everyone, as his 2-meter height allowed. Lisa tried to draw attention to herself, but all her attempts were in vain. She had very few days left to see the beautiful sea and bask in the gentle sunshine. She calmed down and began to rest the rest of her days at her pleasure. But as soon as she stopped fussing and jumping out of her bathing suit, he himself sat down on the beach and asked her, "May I meet you?" She flinched, but did not raise her head. She had to keep her mark. "I am Alexei said, and you are Lisa. I know all about you, so I can go now if you do not want to talk." She waited a little longer, and then rolled over on her back. "Good afternoon. Why so much attention to my modest person?" Issa asked. "I like you," he replied. "It's simple." "A quotation? For how long?" Lisa asked sneeringly. "Since the moment I saw you," Alexei answered. "Actually did 6, but could have prevented you from coming over and getting acquainted 10 days ago." Issa asked, "Unctuous, you're too much desire to jump out of your swimming trunks." "Actually, that's so tacky," he said. "And when you became calm and sort of indifferent, it was time to get to know each other." Lisa was uncomfortable with the fact that all her efforts were seen in white threads, and Alexei noticed everything, which made her feel even worse. But she was glad to have met him. That's the romance developed so vigorously that already on the first night, he invited her to his room. She went without hesitation. But this night, she could only compare it to the nights of her distant, tumultuous youth. Alexei was a great lover, young, assertive, and knew a lot about sex. The remaining days flew by like a hurricane over the city. We had to break up, Lisa thought. At evening, she was back at home. Georgie was not yet home. She took ashore and fell asleep as a baby. She dreamed of warm places, beautiful men, and the sea, which whispered to her that it was already missing her. The meeting with her husband was warm. They missed each other, and in order to be together for a while, Georgie decided not to go to work. After a cup of coffee, they went for a walk and talk in the park, then to a restaurant for dinner. But the desire to dance arose in both of them at the same time. He held her close to him at the same time, whispering sweet words in her ear, telling her he loved her. Lisa was more reserved in her feelings for her husband, but supported these pleasant moments of tenderness. After a wonderful time together, they returned home, a little tired, but satisfied. They went to bed early to say words of gratitude and love to each other. Listening to the next day, Alexei called her. "I want to see you, I missed you," Lisa asked, surprised. "We live 1,000 kilometers away from each other." He said, "I have already rented an apartment in M, and a friend promised to help me with my work. Everything is going well so far. Only you are missing." She gave him her address, and he said, I'll be right there. Her car whistled out the gates of the mansion and raced down the open road to adventure. Dear listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel. It stimulates me to release new videos for you